Welcome to the Designing Hollywood podcast in association with the John Campea Show. I am your host, Robert Meyer Burnett. The Designing Hollywood podcast show is dedicated to all things movies, the movie industry, and its talented professionals. From directors, producers, writers, cinematographers, and of course, costume designers. Designing Hollywood covers some of the most celebrated professionals in the motion picture industry. The show explores the artistry, the craftsmanship, and the stories that bring our favorite motion pictures to life. Today's guest is Sanja Hayes, an internationally acclaimed costume designer whose work spans some of Hollywood's biggest blockbuster franchises. Her impressive credits include Spider-Man No Way Home, Spider-Man Brand New Day, Thunderbolts, Captain Marvel, and Blade, among many others. She's known for blending cinematic storytelling with practical costume construction, creating looks that honor beloved comic book characters while supporting the performances of actors in physically demanding productions. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to celebrate her latest work on the triumphant Spider-Man Brand New Day, which continues Peter Parker's journey after the events of No Way Home and launches an exciting new chapter for Marvel's friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Please join me in welcoming back the incredibly talented costume designer, Sanja Hayes. Sanja, welcome back to the Designing Hollywood show.
Thank you.
It's an incredible honor to have you. You've worked on some of my favorite franchises, Star Trek, and I have to say, if you go all the way back to the work that you did on Blade back in the 90s, that was really the beginning of the Marvel comic renaissance. It even predates 2000's X-Men, and dare I say it, that costume that Blade wore is still one of the greatest costumes ever designed for a motion picture. And Stephen Norrington knocked that one out of the park, and boy, was Wesley Snipes great in that film. But before we get to those things, I'm always very curious here. Was costume design something that you always wanted to do? Everybody I talk to seems to get into it in different ways. Was it a lifelong avocation? Did you go to school for it? Did you have a rigorous academic background? How did you get into costume design?
I did have rigorous academic background, but not in costumes. I graduated architecture, so I'm really an engineer. But I've been lifelong fan of movies. I mean, I grew up watching every single movie. I grew up spending time in a revival theaters. I often went to the movies by myself. And after I graduated architecture back in, that was former Yugoslavia at the time, there was like, I was doing architecture because I wanted to maybe go into art department or maybe design furniture or something like that. But at the same time, my grandma was a seamstress, so I started sewing when I was like 5 or 6 years old. So when I graduated and I was looking for work, there was no really work. It was really hard at the time. The economy was, whatever. And I was very, very lucky because my uncle was like biggest distributor of the films in Croatia.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, would you want to try to work in the movies? And I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, never occurred to me that would be a career for me, right? And costume design was not, I couldn't take a costume designer's orientation anywhere on a college when I was growing up. And so I went to the movie studio there. I went to see their head of the studio, and he said, oh, we have, you're an architect. It would be logical for you to go to the art department. But we have a whole bunch of guys already as interns, right? They're not going to let you through. It's like 7 guys, a woman. It's just not going to happen. But we don't have anybody in costumes. Do you want to do costumes? And I was like, are you kidding me? Of course I do. So I just started working, on a first Croatian movie, then Italian TV series about Garibaldi, and just kept going because, again, there was no other intern. I spoke English even then pretty well. And I just kept going from one movie to another. So it was very lucky.
Did you grow up in Yugoslavia? The former, I mean, the
Yeah,
former Yugoslavia. There was the film industry there. They were making movies. So, like you said,
lots of movies, lots
yeah,
of movies. There was a strong Yugoslavian film production, and there was a lot of co-productions that were coming there because it was fairly inexpensive. And Croatia is very fortunate, or I don't know how to call it. Zagreb looks like a great mid-European city that could double for anything from the streets or whatever. The Croatian coast is beautiful and could double for this. There are lakes, there are forests, there are mountains.
yeah.
So there was a lot. You could shoot a lot, and there was because it was a big co-production. There was a lot of very talented people working in it.
Yeah, which there was a lot of great stuff. I remember seeing a lot of great. That's the only movie that I own. I own this movie, but it's the only
Oh
movie I own in
wow!
Serbo-Croatian. It's
Oh wow!
so. Well, how did you then find your way to the United States and start working over
Um,
here?
well, I actually, as I was working on co-productions, there was a Swedish co-production that came. It's called Sleep, My Dear, or something. I don't remember when Arne Mattsson was directing it. And the sound guy was what his name was John Hayes. It turned out to be my husband at the end. We met, and the rest is history.
Well, I love that your early credits. I just have to list them because The Blob, Death Warrant with Van Damme,
Mhm.
Tombstone. You worked on Stargate, and you worked on Independence Day and the Mighty Morphing Power Rangers. I mean, for someone like myself and anybody who loves genre cinema, these are timeless classics. I mean, for Roland and Dean, Stargate, and Independence Day. I mean, that's
Well,
fantastic.
again, I was really lucky because my husband by then was working on Fright Night, I think, with the costume designer Joseph Porro. And
Was that the
he was,
original Fright Night in 80 that came out in 85?
yeah,
Wow.
or for 80, 85, 86, I don't
Yeah.
know, something like
Yeah,
that
yeah, it was
time.
85.
Because I came to LA on 86, so it must have been 86 or 87, not 85. Because I remember him working on Fright Night, and he was bothering Joseph. You have to meet my wife. You have to meet my wife. You have to meet my wife. And again, I was very lucky because his assistant that was working with him at the time didn't want to do his next movie, which was Blob, or was couldn't. I don't know exactly what happened, and I had pretty good credits by then from all the co-productions, and he
Yeah.
liked me. And I so then I continued working with him. All of those movies that you just mentioned, he was, Stargate, Independence Day, all of that. He was a designer on them, and I was an assistant.
Well, I
So
love, yeah, that I mean, if you think about those films, that's when you started. In Stargate, for instance, you had to come up with an entire alien race. Well, your
I
whole
didn't.
costume
I was
department,
just an assistant.
you were an
I
assistant,
was
but
an.
still, you guys. I mean, that was a big
I
job for a movie that wasn't a huge budget.
No, no, not at all. Not at all. I mean, it was crazy little budget. But Joseph Porro is an incredibly talented, fearless designer, and he just nothing scared him, and he just was very imaginative. And I've kind of learned a lot from him. One of the big things to go with him is that never to go for the first idea. Just keep going for something different, something original. Don't be afraid. And he just would go for it. And it was fantastic to work with him. I mean, he's very, very talented. So I learned so much from him. And that was a big, big, uh, I don't know, both sort of a life school and, I've learned the trade.
Yeah. Well, you spent a year before, a decade actually, before you jumped on board and became the costume designer.
Mhm.
What was that like for you? You know, when you made the transition from working for other people, and then and again, you were doing genre movies. You did Hyperspace, The Mask of Red Death, which is of course an Edgar Allan Poe adaptation, Space Invaders, a lot of
Oh
genre
my
stuff.
God, Space Invaders. I've made all of those costumes myself. I was sewing nights and days, and I had an assistant. Actually, my assistant on that movie was Mona May, that is now celebrated, talented costume designer. And her and I were sewing and making, and it was insane. I mean, that was just, my budget for Space Invader was $10,000.
Wow, that's rather impressive. Because
Mhm.
there you had to, like you said, you had to make all those costumes yourself.
All of those costumes, yeah. And the first Star Trek that I did, Insurrection, the budget was small budget. They were all kind of crazy by the standards today,
You mean
but
Star
also
Trek Insurrection?
Star Trek.
Yeah, Star Trek.
What did I say? Sorry,
No, you said
Star Trek.
Insurrection.
Yeah, um, but I had 2 months of prep, which by like I had to invent 4 alien nations and dress them and make them and design them. I somehow, I don't know, we just kind of did it. It was just kind of going.
Well, it's really interesting that you've done a lot of science fiction and horror and fantasy films. And I like when you did Star Trek Insurrection, which was a next generation film. There were two alien races in that film. You had the Sona
Four,
and the
four
Baku.
in our insurrections. We were four, actually, it was 4 alien nations. There was the little people that was just a kind of, there were somewhere in the background, not too much. And then, yes, they were, it
I mean,
was,
you
yeah.
did some amazing in a very short period of time. You worked for Brian De Palma on Mission to Mars, which that was. I mean, that had a great cast. But what was it like now when the directors that you worked for? I mean, De Palma. What was it? He's a legend. So when you
I
tell us
was
about,
so scared going to, because he was a legend.
yeah,
I mean, not scared, but intimidated. And it was very, very interesting, because I was always interested in space and stuff like that. But then I also knew some people that worked for JPL and stuff like that. So when I was going for an interview, I talked to a friend that I knew that worked for JPL, and I had a long conversation with him about what, if he had any idea what would be, if they were going to space, and how would it, just his take on that, right? Did huge research. And one of the things he told me was that when they go to the space, the astronauts, that each of them has, astronauts has their suits are. Is this interesting to you at all?
yes, because I'm a huge.
Okay.
I mean, I
Okay.
did a whole section on how they made the spacesuits for Project Hail Mary. So I'm eating this up.
Okay. So in regular proper suits, they're all actually pieces. They have like boxes with pieces. They're kind of, and they're connected with the Velcro, right?
Yes.
And all of them, each of them then has a different. Each astronaut has a different color of Velcro. So watch out that they, in case an accident happens, if they fall apart, that they know whose leg is whose and whose arm is whose and all of this. So at the interview with De Palma, I did seriously big research to go to the interview, because it's fascinating, right?
Yeah.
The space is so amazing. And we talked for 45 minutes, I think it was an interview. And the thing that I was telling him about it, and I said, well, if you're going into space, I mean, this would be really interesting to have that, because once you have 5 actors, in the space, how are you going to know who is who if they all have helmets? But if you put different Velcro, then you're gonna know yellow is Don Cheadle, this one is, Tim Robbins, da, 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 da. And I got a job. But I think that
Those are great spacesuits, by the way. They look great.
yeah, it was fun. It was so much fun to do that, and I think that I love this science fiction, and I think that a lot was. I remember when I got Blade. I think I was always really, really doing a huge research when I was going to do these movies, and directors kind of responded to that.
And then, I mean, I have to talk to you about, before we get into Spider-Man and all this, Blade, was really the first big Marvel film that sort of kicked off this comic book renaissance. And what was it like? I mean, getting on that movie. Stephen Norrington had made only one movie. I think it was Death Machine was the movie he made before that, so he hadn't done a lot. And I know that for New Line, it was a pretty big movie. You had Stephen Dorff and Wesley Snipes. Tell us about getting Blade, and were you familiar with comics? Did you do a lot of, like you said, research? Did you look at the comics?
I did look at the comics. I did a lot of research. My take on what it should look like was very different because it was based on the comics, and in comics, Blade looks very different than he ended up working in the movie, right? So I came to the interview with some jackets and coats and pictures, and I mean I brought like a suitcase of stuff, right? And pretty much everything was wrong that I brought. However, it was very interesting. However, so Stephen was listening to me, and I was like, "Oh, this, that, da, all of this," and interview was over. I packed all of this, and I walked away. And before I got to the car, Stephen ran after me to stop me. He said, "You have a job," and I was like, because that never happens. You usually have to, you have to go through the agent, and then you wait, and all of this. And I was like, well, he said, "You know what? I've interviewed 5 or 6 people. Most of them have bigger credits than you, but they all try to impress me who they work with, movies that they worked on, actors, big stars that they worked. You're the only one that did the research, brought the stuff, and just got passionately into that."
Wow.
And he responded to that. He's a very interesting guy. I loved Stephen. He was just quite eccentric and extravagant, but incredibly talented, as you know, obviously. He didn't fit into Hollywood. That's why he stopped working for Hollywood. He just did not like the Hollywood atmosphere, the producers telling him what to do and stuff like that. That just didn't work out for him.
Well, one of the things I think that's Blade was a watershed in terms of the design of the principal character. The fact that you made, you moved away from, I mean, Blade never had bright colors in the comics, but, you made him real. Like, we believed when you first saw the introduction of Blade in that film is one of the great hero introductions, I think, ever. And seeing the leather and the layering and the like armor you had built for him and the way he could move, and I mean that was from a costume design perspective, I remember it was breathtaking seeing him show up for the first time. And because we hadn't seen a superhero character, I think what you brought to the designs of Blade was you elevated the material. I mean, a lot of people look down on comic books, but by the design, and I think that moment that you set and the costumes you designed for that film set a tone that even now in 2026 resonates. If Blade didn't have that kind of costume, if you hadn't put in the research, and if you hadn't done that kind of a design, because the next big comic book movie was Bryan Singer's X-Men in 2000, and they kind of kept the leather motif. They did not go back into brightly colored uniforms. They all were wearing this leather that you could trace right back to Blade.
Yeah, it was very cool and contemporary and real. It was, he could be, walk in that costume. He could be walking into any nightclub. as he did. Just yeah.
Yeah, and it
But
was
you can't. I mean, I can't take all the credit. Steven had pretty much a vision of the movie he wants to do, and it was just basically kind of figuring out what he wants and how to bring this to reality. And then his code was. I mean, Stephen was pretty clear that he wants him in a dark coat. But the code came about with me spending literally the entire day with Wesley looking at Hong Kong martial arts movies.
right.
And
Sure.
he was showing me how he wants to move. And he thought that, he just was like, we obviously, it was not about the cape. So the whole code, the way it looked, which was, wide at the bottom, and it was kind of almost like a cape. It wasn't a cape, but it was like a cape. So that when he jumps and goes, it was making that effect. But that was a result of me literally spending in his house in Venice a day looking at the movies.
Yeah, well, I mean that you did a great job. And I want to get to Spider-Man, but I keep looking at all these things. Like you did the second Alex Cross movie, Along Came a Spider, with Morgan Freeman and Michael Wincott. Incredible. And then you started the Fast and the Furious franchise. How did you know Vin Diesel or Rob Cohen? How did you find yourself getting hired for the Fast and the Furious films?
So I was at the Fast and I was working on Mission to Mars in Vancouver, and they called me in to interview with Fast and Furious, and because of Blade, maybe.
Yeah, I bet Vin Diesel liked
Rob
Blade.
had nothing to do with Vin Diesel, me getting the movie.
No.
It had all to do with Rob Cohen, and then I interviewed for what was the movie with Brendan Fraser?
The Mummy? Was it a Mummy?
No, Monkey Bone. So
Oh,
I came from Vancouver, and I interviewed for the both of the movies at the same day. And Monkey Bone was supposed to be like really, Brendan was known at the time and was supposed to be surrealistic and really cool and all of this. Fast and Furious, that was at the time called Red Line. Nobody knew what it was. However, they let me read the script, which was interesting for an interview. That doesn't happen very often. And I loved the script. I really, really loved the script.
the Fast and Furious
And
script.
yes, the first one. And so I had a meeting with Rob Cohen, and he said, "Well, why? Like, this is not like nobody knows what red line is. Why would you come in from Vancouver to interview for that?" And I was like, the script felt to me like Romeo and Juliet, like young people, Brian and Mia from the different side of the track, and
Yeah, yeah.
love through that. It just reminded me of Romeo and Juliet, Baz Luhrmann's, that
Wow,
came
okay.
at the time. And Rob looked at me, he said, "That's my favorite movie ever." And that was it. I got a job.
Well,
That was literally it.
one of the things that you did on that film as well is there's all these the LA subcultures, because
Mhm.
you had like the Asian motorcycle gangs, and then you had the Hispanic, and then you had Brian, the white kid, and it really delved into the whole. I like how it really brought the different cultures of LA together. And I think the way you dressed everybody delineated the different factions in the film. It set a tone. And then you went on and did almost up through 8, Fast and Furious 8, I think. Oh no, you went even further. You've done all
Yeah,
of them.
I didn't do 8, and I did 9 and 10.
9 and 10.
8 is
Okay.
the only one I didn't do. No.
Well, I've got to give it to you. a friend of mine, we went and saw Tokyo Drift together, and when they're drifting in the parking structure, and you see all the Asian girls in the costumes you put them in. The friend I went with was a director, and he was gay, and he turned to me and he tapped me, and as these Asian girls are dancing around in the costumes, he goes, "I wish I was straight watching this scene because those women look terrific." I thought that was the funniest thing.
Yeah,
And
that is funny.
yeah,
There was a lot of research into, we shot those scenes in Inglewood.
right, yeah. Yeah, but you did a great. I mean, that's of course that was the introduction of Sun Kang into the franchise as Han,
Yeah,
and
that became my long, yeah, he became very good friends. He's amazing.
he's amazing.
Yeah,
He's my favorite character in the franchise.
he's
Justice for Han.
amazing.
But again, I would want to take you up because you worked on Star Trek Beyond for Justin Lin after working with him on the Faster movies. And everybody wants to talk about Spider-Man, so that's what we'll talk about. But I also want to just give you mad props because I think the costume for Captain Marvel, you were the costume designer on Captain Marvel. I loved the leather jacket she wore, the flight jacket that goes over. First of all, the costume looked great. I know that Marvel, you have to deal with what they've come up with before, but that jacket,
Yeah,
kudos.
That was all me. That jacket with the drawing and with the pin up at the back and all of this. That was just explicit on that.
I have a very high end action figure. It's like 12 foot tall that has that jacket on it recreated. So
All right.
kudos to you there. And then your Marvel. It's interesting because you started with Blade, but there was no Marvel Cinematic Universe then. And now you go back into Marvel with Captain Marvel, and then you went on to do Spider-Man No Way Home, Thunderbolts, and Brand New Day. And what I just watched an interview as I was prepping to interview you, that Tom Holland talked about how for this new film, in Brand New Day, that you guys all got together and looked at all the different previous Spider-Man costumes, both Tobey Maguire's costumes and Andrew Garfield's costumes, and you saw those, but then you all got together to come up with the Spider-Man costume that was going to be in Brand New Day. And I wanted to ask you about the evolution. The Spider-Man costume is obviously very, very important, but the movies have done a great job in portraying the Spider-Man costume. But whereas Tobey and Andrew had more traditional costumes, in the MCU films, all of Spider-Man's costumes were augmented by Tony Stark's technology until this one. Now Brand New Day had none of that stuff. And I wonder if you could talk about the evolution. What did you think of the Spider-Man costume? And you got to design, you had to use the things that we had previously before in No Way Home, but then this had a whole new costume. And I wonder if you could sort of give us some philosophical musings on what makes a great Spider-Man costume. How does that work?
Oof. Well, in the No Way Home, I was basically restricted with what the suits were looking before. We were just redoing them for the purpose of the movie. And then we had the black costume that was new, which was a whole other development because of the gold and all of this, how is it going to react. I mean, every single costume is a lot of development. And then, so that was it was more about how to make them rather than, the essence of the costume. And then the movie kind of finishes with the costume that was really never made. It was all visual effect. It was just one scene.
Right.
And it was kind of, I think the only thing that we took from that was the way the fabrics look, the sheen and the color and all of that. And then, yes, exactly. We all got together. We looked at all of those costumes, and it made sense because he met now Tobey and he met the other two Spider-Men. So it made sense that once he is left alone and there's no Stark Industries, that he kind of takes from both of those costumes and incorporates that in his costume. But it's also makes sense because it is in a sense the most simple of the costumes that have
Right.
been of them all, which made it almost the most difficult, because in its simplicity it had to be perfect. Because
Right.
when you have a little pieces of this and that, you kind of, I mean, they all are, funny enough, they're probably the most complicated costumes in the MC universe because of their simplicity. Because the rest of them, and because of the fabric, so you little mistakes just generate so many problems. I mean,
And
we
then,
we
oh, I was going to say
yeah.
that the red and the blue, the color, I mean, is it tough to find the complementary, the exact red and the exact blue that work together? Because I thought the costume in Brand New Day looked fantastic. I mean,
You
it
have
was,
no idea.
well, tell us.
We have used 250 meters of fabrics, testing the colors and testing the prints. We had 5 tests, at least camera tests, probably more, testing different reds, different blues. But then, in order to achieve, there was something in the sheen that one scene in the previous movie had of blue that almost looked metallic,
Yes.
that there is no fabric that looks like that.
Yeah, because it was
Just there
CG,
isn't.
so that you couldn't.
Yeah, they did it CG,
Yeah.
but we were going to do everything practically. So we were printing a fabric in such a way that would read on the camera like it's metallic. Now, in order to achieve that, it's like nobody has done it before. So we tried. I had the most amazing group of artists in London. The printer, the dyers, printers, they just kept working. As I said, 250 meters of fabric on tests, just on tests. Um, and then when we decided to finally found the right blue and red, because it's digital, it looked too shiny. It was crazy to a point that if we started with white fabric, the camera would read it to something. So we had to start with orangey fabric in order to achieve, when it's dyed, the undertone that is the right red. And the same with blue. We couldn't start dyeing it with white. It had to be a turquoise that then turn into the right blue. And then they said, okay, this looks great, but fabrics like this looks too shiny again on the sun.
Right.
So what are we going to do now? We tried to tell the director, you shouldn't be worried about. We're shooting in London. There will be never sun. Now, Destin is from Hawaii. Our DP lives in Los Angeles. Anyways, so we figured out how we are going to do it for sun. We never used that costume because it was never sun. So we really actually never used it. So yes, it was, I don't even know how many, but probably 2 months we were testing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now,
And
when you're
mhm.
working with Marvel, obviously, I can't imagine the levels of secrecy that you had to go through on No Way Home. But how much, like, okay, after all of that work, is there then do you have to go get approval from Kevin Feige, or do the two of you make that final decision and say this is it?
So we kind of, I mean, none of the decisions in these movies, I mean, Destin was involved, DP was obviously involved, Amy Pascal was involved.
Mm.
And then we had, after the camera tests, we had dailies, and we all decided what is good and what we want to do. And then I'm sure Destin went to Kevin just to show it to him.
Sure.
But I think after all of us agreed, there was not much, because we were very, very critical,
Right.
what works, what doesn't. So, yeah.
Well, it was spectacular. I use spectacular or amazing. They're all Spider-Man related terms, but it really did look fantastic on camera, and there was a lot. It really felt different than, I mean, in No Way Home, he's wearing that suit that's half Stark armor that he got in Infinity War. But this looked
Yeah.
like there was something so refreshingly traditional about the costume, and I love the way that he would take on and off the cowl, and it just felt, it was right out of the comic book. I mean, it felt like you were really watching.
That was the idea, to go back to the basics. He is making it himself. We decided, and that was big thing in between Tom and Destin, that the suit needs to not be perfect, because in the other movies the suits look perfect, and I know most of my colleagues think that I'm not doing anything on those movies, that everything is CGI, and it's not at
Right.
all. You know,
Well, I have
we
to.
made 56 costumes on Brave New World. 56 costumes.
Wow. That
Yeah, in
well,
order to, for Tom, for stunts, for the. Yeah.
another thing I'd like to give a shout out to is everyone else's costumes. I really, what Ned was wearing or what MJ was wearing. I loved all of the everyday clothes, like how you had Peter in hoodies, and there was something really refreshing. It really felt New York. I know that you didn't actually shoot in New York, but the whole look of the film, it was definitely a much more grounded feeling Spider-Man movie. It really did feel more independent in a way, like you were watching a relationship movie made by an independent filmmaker about falling in love in New York City. I mean, I really liked the costuming of everyone else, not just Spider-Man
Yeah.
and the heroes, but with
Thank you. Yeah, we tried to make it very much New York, and I had again a group of very talented people that worked on extras. I mean, every extra in the movie is dressed.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't come looking like that. We really tried to make them in variety and textures and seasons, and it was a lot of work because we were shooting different seasons in the same day, and making sure that it works. So yeah, it was a lot of work to do that, and it did certainly help, that I was familiar with Ned and MJ from the previous movie, and I loved working with both of them. But we spent on them talking a lot about, so what happened now. They're graduating college, and we have few. I don't know how much is left in the movie because I didn't see the movie. There's the thing that Ned shoots. It's like a first year, second year, third year, and stuff like that. And with Tom, it was all about being a more grown up, and also trying to convey that he is now buying his own clothes,
Yeah.
because Aunt is not there anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So
Well, you did that.
yeah. So, and again, it's a lot. Tom has a big influence. He's very much into those movies, and very much into his character, and he's extremely bright and extremely involved in what he does, and it's just, he's such an impressive young man. It's just,
Oh, you can see. I mean, obviously they've been on the press tour all over the world, and you can see how intelligent and how much he really cared about this movie and everything that he put into it.
yeah.
But I think that there's
He's
other.
such a hardworking guy. It's crazy how hardworking he is.
Well,
Yeah,
it
it's
it
just
shows.
crazy. Yeah.
And you got to do other things. Like what I really liked is we get to see the Punisher, and we get to see Bruce Banner, the Hulk, and you, like, as anyone will tell you, I'm a huge fan of ninjas. So whenever you can see, seeing the hand come and fight, I mean, that fight scene at the
I'm
end.
really proud on those
Oh
costumes.
well,
I'm really
they are
proud of them.
awesome. They are
Yeah,
just awesome.
we had so much fun doing them and going back and forth, and it was so much fun doing that, and I really am proud. And then and we kind of dressed all of them, and then Snow, that is the leader, the girl, came back basically last. So her costume was designed last, and I think she was in Shang-Chi. So Destin was like, "Oh, I got Snow, so she's going to be the leader." And I spent few days watching her Instagram stuff, the way she moves, right?
Right.
And again, it's just the whole costume is to enhance her movements, because I was like, oh my god, she's amazing, she's just this an incredible girl. So the whole costume was designed so that enhanced, so that it just, and then I went to the stand coordinator and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, is that going to work with you? And he was like, yeah, that's perfect, because I want this. And yeah, and Snow is just terrific.
Well, I
She's
love the
just,
fact that you leaned into the red. A lot of the time ninjas are dressed in all black, but I thought the red was awesome. I mean,
but
it looked.
isn't that is the comics I read, right?
Yeah, but it sometimes in live action maybe it wouldn't work, but it looked, those costumes were beautiful. And as a ninja connoisseur myself, I thoroughly enjoyed what you did with those. And of course, the show-stopping fight scene at the end, those costumes looked fantastic. As I mean, the red battling the red and blue of Spider-Man, it was terrific.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
but
it was. I was a little bit nervous about that, but it just looked amazing. But yes, one red, another red, and
oh
and
no, it's
that
great.
red that you see on ninjas, there is probably 75 different reds on those costumes.
Right,
You
right.
know, they were like over that this piece and that piece, and then aging and stuff like that. So yeah, I think my entire crew did an amazing job on them.
Well, one of the things that I think that you've done for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, both in Thunderbolts and like in this film, you've grounded all of the superheroes that you're, whether the Thunderbolts, aka the New Avengers, and what you did on Brand New Days. I really like, there's a real world quality to all of these costumes, these superhero costumes. I mean, when you look at Thor, clearly his costumes do not look of the earth because he's from Asgard.
Right.
But these costumes are all functional, but they feel and they're very believable in
Mhm.
real world situations. Like even the suit, the I guess what was it? His tweed, what Bruce Banner was wearing. It was a it was kind of an upgrade from what you'd seen him wear. It was a more serious kind of a costume, and
Mhm.
when he breaks out, even you want to know, well, what shorts are the Hulk? What shorts are the Hulk going to be? Is he going to be wearing once he goes full on Hulk? Because those shorts are obviously important. Because every time he hulks out, he has to have different shorts. But even the shorts you chose, the quality of those shorts was, or the pants that get ripped, it felt
Yeah.
more real. If that makes any sense.
Mm.
I mean, and I
Yeah.
really love what you have done with all of the design work in Thunderbolts and all of the Spider-Man movies, the
Thank
two that you've worked on. So, how much, as a costume designer, when you're working on these films that have, they're so huge and they're such gigantic productions, how how much time, how much prep time did you have on a movie like Brand New Day? It took a long time to get the Spider-Man costume right, but when do you begin? Is it
About
three
six
months?
months.
6 months?
Six
Wow.
months. But it is to collect all of those clothes for extras on one level, and then, as I said, we were doing the at least 2 months of just development of Spider-Man costume.
Right.
And and then also it was very important, Tom, because we knew from the beginning that Tom is going to spend so much more time in costume than in any other movie.
Yep.
So it had to be really comfortable, because you don't, just so that he's not hating every day being there. So we tried, it was not just, developing which is a big in every one of these movies, trying to make the actors be able to do everything that they need to do. So I always try to make from Captain Marvel, every costume as comfortable for the actors as possible, so that they are not thinking about costumes. But this was a whole other level of comfort uh, for Tom, and so we would try it on him and see it, and then change it and make it. And I had an incredible group of cutter fitters and just crew in London. It just was amazing. So yeah, it's a long prep, and then we had the was long to do all the ninjas, because it's not just one set of costumes. We
Right.
had like three sets for
Cost.
somebody, and as I said, for Tom. And the one thing, as you said, it looks grounded. That is the big thing. But Tom was sick and tired, as am I, everybody thinking that they're all CGI.
Right.
So when we started shooting, it was in Glasgow, that he made a point to come out, take this off, and say, "Hello, it's me. I am in the costume." It's, what I mean, because everybody thinks of CGI, even though it's obvious it's not, if you
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
understand it. But
Well,
and he didn't wear any muscle suit or anything like in most of the other MCI universe. All of the superheroes often, most of the times, wear muscle suit. It's all Tom.
well, you could see there's the scene where he goes into Yelena, to Florence Pugh's office, and she's in
Yes.
the pool, and he's just wearing the cowl but nothing else. I mean, he was in incredible physical condition.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
It's all him.
incredible. Well, now I have to ask about Sadie Sink's character, who now has been revealed to be Jean Grey. Now, if I might, and I might be pushing a little farther, but being that you did work on Thunderbolts, and being that was Jake Schreier, and Jake Schreier has been tapped to direct X-Men, and Sadie Sink is playing Jean Grey, who's one of the core members of the X-Men. But she's not an X-Man she hasn't gone to Xavier school, presumably doesn't know who the X-Men are. There aren't any X-Men in the MCU yet. But was there ever any thought of putting her into some kind of traditional comic accurate costume? Not at all.
No,
Not ever.
no, no. The decision was because because the way the movie is, we didn't want to know that she is
Right.
actually.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Destin was just no. He just wanted her to look as cool as possible and different, and original. And so we kept her colors green and yellow, but we just kind of wanted to make her just be cool and different, and
Sure.
not, yeah, that was the sort of marching orders.
So the question then I've got to ask is, my favorite Marvel comics growing up are the X-Men. I've been reading the
Mhm.
X-Men for 40 years. Might you have something to do in the future with the X-Men at all?
I don't know. I don't
Okay.
know. It's not, no. I honestly don't know.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
I don't know if, because for one, I I was on now on Helldivers with Justin Lin, and that you probably know what happened with that with Jason Momoa.
Yeah.
That was crazy. That's why we're in New Zealand, because he wanted to shoot movie here, and then he said, "Oops, I've changed my mind." So now they're looking for another. So I have no idea if we're going to continue it or not.
Mm.
And so I just
Big
don't
fan of that
know.
video game, though. That the game
Yeah,
is great.
I know. I've never heard of it before, However, I got lucky because it was one of my son's favorite video game, like
Yeah.
favorite, very favorite. So he actually was working with me as a concept artist and helping and yeah,
Well, I would love to. The great thing about
fun project.
the X-Men have so many diverse costumes within that whole
Yeah.
universe, not just for the main team of X-Men, but for all the other mutants. So
Mhm.
it's really terrific. They've got some of the X-Men in Doomsday, and they've gone back to the classical
Mhm.
X-Men
Yeah.
costumes that look fantastic. At least the ones that you can see so far, because they've shown very little. When you're working on these Marvel projects, do you interact with other production teams? Do you Marvel costume designers talk to one another about
Yeah.
developing? Yeah,
Yeah, not about developing, no, because the development of the costumes it's usually decided by director,
yeah,
producers. It's by the how would I say the spirit of the movie. Like Jake Schreier on Thunderbolts had his vision
mm,
of how he wants to have. He wanted it much darker, and he changed the Taskmaster and he changed the Ghost into black from white, and
hmm,
because so it's usually, but we do talk about. Well, I did talk about Judiana when she was doing Avengers, because she was taking a lot of costumes from Thunderbolts
yeah, yeah,
to the Avengers. So we did talk about that, and yeah, we do talk about that. And my assistant from Spider-Man went on the second now Avengers.
yeah. On
Um,
Secret Wars.
yes, so yeah, we do talk, but not about development. No, that is pretty much decided within that movie.
It's when you get to sit down and watch. You've worked on so many of these big fantasy oriented projects. When you sit down and watch the film that you've worked on for so long come together, I know you haven't seen Brand New Day yet, but when you saw, say, Blade for the first time, and you saw how well your costumes actually worked, when Wesley Snipes shows up in that incredible opening, the blood rave, that whole sequence, and when you see it on camera, are you usually delighted by what you see, or do you feel like, oh, we could have done better? I mean, because we as fans love it, but
Um,
what?
in some movies, especially at the beginning, I would be like, oh God, but that hasn't happened much lately. If you have enough prep, I'm usually, quite happy on Thunderbolts. I was really happy how the costumes turn out. Very, very happy. And I actually saw Thunderbolts like 3 times or something crazy. I mean, just I loved the movie also. I thought
I did
Jake
too.
did
I thought Thunderbolts was terrific, and I was very curious to see how you were going to do something like the Sentry, and make that character work. That was a really really
Oh
beautifully.
my God, what a nightmare. Put the guy in a gold spandex suit, right? I was like, oh, and that was a big, how to do that it doesn't look Vegasy. That was
Right.
um so it was a lot. It's all, I mean, this whole stuff is it's all in the way you make the costumes, and the fabrics and the details. It's so much about the details
Mm,
in these costumes to um, so that it looks more real, not Vegasy, not cheap, not this, not that. So but when it's good when you have time, so you can try this, you can try that, and yeah.
well, listen, I've kept you for an hour. I want to thank you very much for your time and talking to us, and congratulations with the success. Because Brand New Day is opening. It's the biggest opening in all of cinema history. It looks to be. So that's, you got to love that.
As it should be.
No, it's a truly wonderful wonderful movie, and it's one of the best I think Marvel has ever done, and all the hard work that everybody put into it shows, and I think if you get to go get a chance while you're in New Zealand, go into Auckland and see it on a big on a big screen with an audience, because you'll be, I think.
That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going
Yeah.
to see it. Because normally I see movies at the premiere with Hollywood people, and I'm really excited to see it with a whole bunch of screaming kids.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see.
Yeah, if you can't, it's Sunday there already, but I was going to say go see it when it's summer. So, it's not summer there though.
No, it's winter.
It's winter there. But anyway, Sanja Hayes, I want to thank you for being here on the Designing Hollywood show. Thanks for coming back, and I very much appreciate your time.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the movies are going to continue going this way when they're going more to real shooting rather than CGI.
Yeah, I think so. Well, you can feel it. You can really feel it in the film.
Audience is responding to that. I love it. That more and more, rather than going toward more and more CGI, that it's going different direction. Hopefully it's going to continue that way.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being here.
Anytime.
I'd love to do it again.
Bye.
Maybe whatever we're doing next.
Yeah. We don't know. Maybe it's Helldivers. I hope so.
I'm gonna hold out for X-Men too for you. I love to see you do that, because it would be
maybe
it'd be great.
Yeah, it would be fun. And Jake is great, so we'll see.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Bye.
A special thank you to founder and executive producer Martika Ibarra, co-founder, costume designer, the legendary Marilyn Vance, and of course, John Campea from the John Campea Show. Thank you to all of our viewers for tuning in, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tune in to the audio version wherever you listen to podcasts. I am, of course, your host, Robert Meyer Burnett, and you can find me on Instagram at rmburnett, or find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, or on YouTube at PostGeek Singularity. Thanks very much. Like, subscribe, and give us your comments. What would you like to see on the channel? Right down below. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode of Designing Hollywood.